think sometimes songs can be incredibly prophetic, and it's almost kind of your subconscious is trying to tell you something, but I often either don't realise what it's saying or I choose not to listen. So the song is sometimes very clear in what it thinks I should do, or it's very clear about an idea it has about the world, but it almost comes from a place that I don't understand. So often whatever message is in there, I don't hear them in real life, or I just choose to ignore them. So it's a kind of useless superpower. It's like you're able to predict the future, or you're able to understand something very deep about yourself, or you're able to see exactly the right answer in the song, but in life, I have no idea what I'm doing. In Useless Magic, there's lyrics, there's poetry, there's a lot of artwork. In terms of what I've done in my career, the visuals and the music, everything was all together. I never really thought of anything separately. I guess people are like, oh, are they concept albums? It wasn't really like a concept, it was more like you just follow an idea as far as you could go. So if you were interested in the Pre-Raphaelites, get super interested in them, you know, and it would tie into the music, and it would tie into the album cover, it would tie into the show. So maybe it was going to art college. I never saw any of the parts as separate. To me, it was a world that had to be really cohesive and that everything should tie together. In terms of like lyrics and poetry, I guess up until this point I was a bit insecure about the lyrics, because I thought that by singing something you could give it a magical quality that it didn't have written down. The lyrics have never really been written down anywhere, because I thought it was like they were being caught and they would lose something, but I think it was also just an insecurity on my part that they weren't good enough. But it felt good to put them down, actually. A lot of the lyrics, especially for this latest record, High as Hope, were actually poems that I was writing. So I guess my confidence as a writer, or the fact that I'm maybe just writing more, has led to being able to kind of make a book finally. It's also really nice to look back on your work and realise that the same themes have always plagued you, which is kind of good and bad. You're like, oh, it's like constantly obsessed with the idea of falling, or kind of angels or transcendence. And even when you were a kid, like when I was writing songs when I was 19, it was still the same stuff, which is kind of comforting in a way. Also, maybe I need to stop repeating myself, but it's weirdly like comforting to see that you've always been fixated on the same things. I was speaking to Tom Beard, and I met him when he was 17, and he's photographed every one of my album covers, and we would become fixated on certain groups of artists and explore them. It was like our own art college, you know, we were both art college dropouts, but we found a way to still learn about artists and explore them through making record covers. You know, the first album was the Pre-Raphaelites, the second we got very into Urte and Klimt and Tamara de Lempicka. Fourth one, we were looking at James Turrell, and we went to the James Turrell stage in Mexico that was built over a cenote. So, you know, we still were trying to learn, and I loved art college, but I dropped out to become a musician, and Tom, you know, was becoming a photographer and a filmmaker, but I think together we still managed to carry on an artistic education. This record, he showed me a book of Francesca Woodman pictures, and we kind of developed this album artwork from there. So I've learnt a lot from kind of making album covers. It was easier to make quite a big book, because I was like, oh, there's quite a lot of songs. Also, I enjoyed kind of collecting the work together and seeing that it all has been linked. The albums aren't very disparate, the themes are all quite similar. And that's nice, because you almost solidify a sense of yourself by looking back through the work and being like, oh, I've always been on the same kind of path. It changes a bit, but I'm always looking for the same thing. And yeah, it was enjoyable, like looking through the notebooks and also going back through some of the old lyrics I found really interesting, and how the songs have changed a bit, and perhaps when I was younger it was more kind of these mythical fairy tales, and then at some point it gets very real, and then seeing the evolution of all those bits into the poetry, which the poetry is sort of an even deeper exploration of like what I think my voice is, you know. When you're writing a song, there's almost another character, or you're speaking in tongues almost. There's something that's channeling through you. But trying to figure out what I would sound like if it was just on paper, it was an interesting exploration. It gets very real. It's been kind of fascinating to kind of come out of the songs and get into being a writer, and then seeing then what feeds back into the songs, so it all kind of goes in a circle. I had a corrugated cardboard notebook when I was 8, and I got it for Christmas, and it was made out of like recycled material, which I was very proud of. And I remember writing a poem in there about recycling. But I was always writing little poems, like before I was writing songs. I remember I was writing strange little poems and little drawings. One of them was about meeting a polar bear that eats you. It's like already like really fixated on like doom or being eaten by a bear at 8. It was like deep sense of guilt already as an 8-year-old. I don't know what I was. And I remember writing in school books and writing in library books from school, and I got into a lot of trouble at school for writing like little poems or lyrics in library books. But weirdly, before I'd even ever had a boyfriend, never really had boyfriends at school, but I was writing a song about a tragic breakup that I hadn't even had. And even when I was drinking a lot, when I was like trying to write Lungs, I would lose everything else, but I would never lose this notebook that I had. It was like I started writing on squares because I found lines made me feel like it had to be good. So I started writing on squared paper because it sort of freed up my head. It kind of like got rid of the perfectionism. But I remember I would be like out all night and everything else would get lost, but I would always come back kind of still clutching this sort of battered up notebook that I still have. So yeah, I've always had notebooks around. Yeah, they're kind of the most treasured objects that I have in my life, I think.